Time is 12 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Do I have a motion to call to order the April 15th, 2021 Ad Hoc Committee meeting for Lexington One School Board of Trustees?
Mr. Chair, I move that we convene this meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so we are in meeting. 1.1 on your agenda for today, notification of compliance with South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. On Thursday, April 15th, 2021, Ad Hoc Committee of the Lexington County School District 1 Board of Trustees formed to review policy GCF, GCF-R, professional staff hiring, and policy GDF, GDF-R, support staff hiring. We'll hold a committee meeting at noon in Building 1 of Central Services Auditorium located at 100 Charter Springs Road in Lexington, South Carolina. The district will put in some special safeguards to comply with CDC COVID-19 masking and social distancing recommendations. During the meeting, there will be limited seating to maintain social distancing. Once the seating is filled, which doesn't seem to be a problem, attendees will be asked to the staff development room, overflow room, to watch the meeting while observing social distance guidelines. The auditorium will be thoroughly cleaned and sanitized before the board meeting. Board members, employees, and individuals attending the meeting in person are asked to wear a cloth face mask or covering at all times. After the committee meeting, the district will follow its previously established process of posting a video on board-related public meetings to its YouTube channel, Lexington One video site, and its website. We invite the public to attend and appreciate your assistance in making the public aware of this meeting. You should have received a copy of the agenda prior to this. Do I have a motion to approve the submitted agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. In addition, you should have received the ad hoc committee meeting minutes prior to this meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Little, to carry us through the report from Human Resources.
Thank you very much, Dr. Guyton. At the conclusion of our last meeting, I believe we had a number of questions that were asked about how we needed to proceed and move forward, and the impact on our human resources. And so I asked Devonna Price if she would share with us some of, based on some of your questions that she received. I'd also like to thank Tracy Halliday for putting those questions together and sending them electronically to Ms. Price. And then I believe she has brought a special guest with her as well. It's great to see Dr. Bill Kuhn here. Obviously, as you know, he's the principal at Meadow Glen Middle School. And one of our more experienced, we won't use the other word, we'll just say experienced, administrators here in Lexington One. So I'm going to turn it over to Devonna Price.
Well, thank you for allowing me to kind of speak to these two policies today. I think probably the easiest thing to do would be go policy by policy, try to answer your questions, and then I certainly did bring a guest today because I wanted you to hear straight from the people that it impacts the most. So in looking at GCF, which is the professional staff hiring policy, I think the first two questions you had were around, if the policy would in any way limit our ability to compete, if it would be, if it would hold any kind of competition, or hold any kind of let me find the exact wording of the question you asked. I thought I had it in that other one.
I've got it in front of me.
Yeah.
So question one was the impact of posting every
Yes.
vacancy position and the unintended consequences of posting all jobs. And then secondly, Does the posting of all jobs interfere with the district's ability to compete with other districts?
Yes, and I think those two really kind of go hand in hand. We are certainly already in a hiring situation where it is very difficult to find professional teaching staff. You add kind of COVID on top of that, it certainly complicates things. So any type of situation where we are having any type of delay complicates that. We already do have competition with other districts around us that offer things like bonuses and sign-ons that maybe we don't. We do stand on our merit a lot, which is a great thing. We are a wonderful place to be and work, and we offer a lot of things that other places don't. But principals are very limited in their timing. Right now, Dr. Kuhn and I were just talking as he was walking in. Our focus, their focus is on hiring. We want the best people working with our students. Right now, there's a time crunch for that because all professional staff have to have their contracts turned in by May the 10th. So if there are teachers in surrounding districts that are looking to maybe make moves, now is the time that they're kind of interviewing and looking. So as things become available, for example, if Dr. Kuhn were to have a teacher who tells him, that she's leaving and she's a 6th grade teacher, and we post that 6th grade position, he may interview for that. He may have 2 or 3 candidates that he interviews, and he may say, well, I really would love to have them both, but I have one position. So he may take the top candidate. The next day or the next week, he may turn around and have another teacher that leaves. He would like to be able just to move on that next candidate so that he does not lose them and not have to, of course, turn around and post and go through that whole process again. So there are situations where, of course, we try to post in every situation that we can, but there are situations where we certainly don't want to slow that process down by having to do that. I don't know if Dr. Kim wants to kind of speak to that whole process of professional hiring and the impact of that on a school, but
You need a microphone.
yeah, right there. Yep.
Oh, y'all are fancy. But I can't see this here. Oh, no, I can't see it. Am I on? Okay. So just to kind of give you an example, today my team and I started interviewing at 7 o'clock this morning. I've done 3 interviews this morning already. I have an interview at 1:30. I'm trying to get the best and the brightest that I can get for our school, and I have to fight for every one of them. And I'll just to be transparent, when I came here, when my family and I moved to Lexington from Sumter in 2005, I might have 10 or 15 people apply for each position that I had at my school when we opened Pleasant Hill Middle School. And that's not the case now. So it's a lot less, and the competition is tremendous. So so there are times when I'm trying to, and this is I'll give you a good scenario. Okay, so occasionally I get a situation where I've got 2 people where I want to hire Mike and I want to hire Jada, and they're neck and neck. They're like the best. Like we're like those 2 people would be wonderful here or in Lexington 1. I'd like to have both of them here, but I only have one position. And so I hire one of them, and because that person might be just a little better fit in with that particular group of teachers or that particular grade level. And then what sometimes happens is a week down the road, another teacher says, I can't do this virtual stuff anymore. I can't do this COVID stuff anymore. I'm retiring. And it's the same discipline. It's the same subject area. And now I'm trying to stay, like right now, I'm trying to stay ahead of contracts, okay? And then we have another gentleman's agreement, I guess, at the end of May with the Midlands schools, where I forget what the date is, sometime in May. We can't have people going across, getting out of contracts after that. So there's a real crunch with timelines. There's a real for me, if I'm trying to get a first year, there's 5 or 6 other schools that are trying to get that same student. Or if I'm trying to get somebody, have some people from some Lexington 5 schools that are trying to come over to Meadow Glen, and I got to stay ahead of contracts. And I just can't, the level of competition since I started here in Lexington 1 in 2006, the last few years has been tremendous. I mean, it's just, to get the best candidates. Now, you can get people, but I always want the people that I would want teaching my kids. My kids. I have 2 kids. So I want those people teaching my kids, because I know that you guys would want the same thing. You want the best people teaching your kids. So it really has amped up here. Just from a practitioner's point of view, this has been really, it's really tough the last few years in terms of getting the very best candidates. I mean, I could tell you a story. I had a candidate that I had heard really good things about. I didn't think she was prepared for the interview. This was the week before spring break. I didn't think she was prepared. So I called her on it, and I said, look, I need you to do some homework, and I'm going to call you after spring break, and we're going to talk about this. And I talked to her the day before yesterday, and she was ready. Like, she was ready. And she already had like 3 other offers. Like, I wouldn't have hired her or offered her based on the first interview, but she really wanted to come to Lexington 1, and we gave her another chance. And I may not have done that when I opened up Pleasant Hill. I probably would have gone to the next candidate. But y'all, there's not a next candidate a lot of times. So we're fighting for the very best. I'm trying to get the very best people to teach the kids, our students at Meadow Glen, and to be teammates with in a very collegial, collaborative atmosphere in a great family environment at our school. It takes a special person to do that. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to kind of share the impact of that on the schools. I mean, that's where it has the impact.
I guess to kind of follow up to that, were these new positions that you're hiring for, or vacant positions? What container would like the interviews for
It
this
could
morning?
be, it's both, but right now I'm trying to replace people who are retiring.
Gotcha.
Like, I'm losing 3 amazing people that probably have close to 80 years experience between the 3 of them, and they're retiring.
Gotcha.
So, and I think COVID did have something to do with it, but that's not why we're here. But to answer your question, it's both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I assume, since you had applicants on that, there was a posting that occurred or something along those lines?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess for us, the big question is those ones, the sort of language problem, or I say problem, the language that we have in question is the general advertisement of positions. So are we going to post all of them, some of them, none of them, I guess is the question. I think the conversation last time really hinged on those ones where well, let me ask you, sort of boots on the ground, can you think of a position that you would not post because of fear of losing or inability to fill that position, and therefore you needed to act quickly to hire? Sort of boots on the ground kind of look.
I think that when you get, so here's what happens. So when we get the contract time or those dates, you definitely could lose a good person. I mean, there's no question you could lose a good person. If we had to, if I lost somebody right before those drop dead dates are, guys, and I had already had, or we had a pool of candidates that we had already, vetted out or talked with, and then I had to repost, and those people are going to sign with a contract with another place or stay where they are, if they're a veteran teacher, and we would, and I have lost out on people because of that, because right now, if I have an opening, I'm posting it and it's staying open for X amount of days, and then we're going through the process of vetting the resumes and going through and putting that together, and then trying to find Like this one position one of the positions we interviewed for today, I talked to 3 people, they had already signed contracts with somebody else. And they had just, if you look at their, what is it called, frontline, if you look at their frontline, they had just put in for our position. Like when we advertised for it, they just put in, and they had already signed a contract with somebody else. So I guess to answer your question, yes, you could.
So operationally, so that we kind of understand it, you have let's say a teacher position, you offer a job to a teacher, and then at some drop dead date, that teacher backs out of the contract or doesn't sign. And therefore, now you have a vacancy in that position. And so operationally, you would look at your pool of candidates and say, okay, we interviewed X, Y, and Z people. Let's now move to person Y within this pool of candidates, therefore bypassing any sort of posting of that position, because I guess theoretically you have already gone through that posting.
Correct.
Right, it would have already
From a
been.
first occurrence.
Right, it's already been posted, and they just would have been, I always hate, I'm an old coach too, a long time ago, and when you have to cut 15, 16, 17, those are the hardest 3 cuts.
Sure.
Well, when you're hiring people, and you guys know this because y'all are around this, when you're hiring people, there's those top 2, there's sometimes not a whole lot of separation right there. And like I said, to start with, I would be happy with either one of those teaching my kids.
Right.
So, yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And sometimes we go to, recruitment fairs where, we're competing with districts who are literally printer in hand, printing the contract, handing it to the person as they interview them right there. So, to Dr. Kuhn's point, by the time we even, they've applied with us, but by the time we even get to pick up the phone, that district has already laid the contract on the table and they've signed it. So we've tried to do some different things with that, obviously, with the pool and other things to be proactive about that. But they know they have choice and are certainly using that.
Well, and I don't think they're doing their due diligence either. I've had people that they don't even call for references on folks. Like we are required at least to talk to at least 2 people. So if I talk to you today, Dr. Guyton, I have to go and find 2 of your supervisors for sure before I can even think about sending anything up here. So there are districts that are not that. And I have principal friends that do that, and I don't know how they get away with it, but they get away with it. They don't even check references.
Because we have tried to really clean that process up a lot, and I think that's kind of what Dr. Kuhn is speaking to as far as posting and making sure they are checking references and posting those positions, and probably, like he said, a lot more than they would even like to sometimes, because they just so need to get to that next step, and you need to post it. You need to go ahead and post it. Well, I know who I want, and we hear you, but we need you to go ahead and post it. And then same thing with, I've tried to get this reference check. I need 2 reference checks. And we try to be as flexible as we can, but we're also trying to make sure we have our ducks in a row, and we've crossed our T's and dotted our I's, but it does cost us sometimes already with the processes we've put into place. So we hate to put any further barriers into place that would continue to do that.
But it does, if you go back to the top 2 people, if you call their references and you're deadlocked with the 2, and then you talk to those 2 references, those references sometimes will put candidate A over candidate B. Okay, because you guys know you can have the best interview in the world, but how is he or she really in real life? Every day of the week, how do they act? Do they play well with others and share their toys, kind of thing?
And Dr. Kuhn, if you ever need to check my supervisors, it's Aetna and Cigna. Supervisors most commonly, so just check with them. Okay, thank you. I guess question 3, interfering with the district's transfer policy. Were you able to?
Yeah, I don't see any way that it would conflict with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then conflict with policy GCE, GCR, and CEB-R.
Right. So, in kind of looking through those policies, you know, absolutely right. Word for word, they do not match exactly word for word. But I think, you know, the purpose of each of the policies is very different. So the purpose of this policy is professional staff hiring. So, you know, it's going to highlight those components that are around that, which is posting and those kind of pieces. Some of the other pieces like GCR obviously is recruitment, CEBR, duties of the superintendent, all those pieces. They encompass a lot of different pieces. You know, recruitment's going to talk about how we go out and recruit and that we do post it. You know, it's a lot of different elements of that. One of the elements is posting, which we, you know, generally do as part of that recruitment process. You know, it's a piece of that. You know, does it match word for word exactly? It's not going to match word for word exactly because that's not the intent of that particular policy. If we needed to go back and examine that, we certainly could, if you would like it to match word for word. But, you know, I don't think it conflicts as far as we see, as far as how we read the policy. And I think our attorney was in agreement with that.
Committee, any questions for Ms. Price before we, for policy GCF, before we move on?
I just know, I talked with Mr. Stacy about this, and I agree that if there's a pool and there's a position that you've advertised for previously, that you can pull from that. My main concern here is that there are postings that, or jobs that aren't posted, that kind of slip through the cracks, and the board is never made aware of those. So I don't want to hold y'all up in any kind of way by saying, you know, you have to post this, especially, you know, when it comes to bus drivers, food service workers, or even teaching staff. Because like Mr. Coon said, those are, you know, all the same kinds of discipline. My thing is we just need a way to track what's going on here. Because sometimes there are, like I said, postings that, jobs that aren't posted, and maybe even a new position is added, but we are not made aware of that as the board until we get a resume sent on our desk.
Okay.
So another question, I know you said that at some job fairs, they have a printer in hand with a contract there. What is stopping us from doing that?
Well, I think, you know, we're trying to honor our process of vetting, because we don't want to give a contract at hand if we haven't talked to a reference or had some type of conversation with someone about that person. Yeah. Because sometimes the people at the fair maybe have not left on the best terms, may even have something against their certificate that we don't know about right there at the fair.
Ms. Garris, when I was at Pleasant Hill, I had a teacher that left us and went to Somerville. I don't know what the name of the district is, whatever the county is down there. Nobody called me until about 3 months into the school year. And the person got a job down in Somerville. And then the principal called and said, why didn't you tell me about XYZ? Because the same things that I was seeing started happening in Somerville. And I said, because you never called me. And I wondered why you never checked a reference on this teacher. And he goes, you know, I've learned, you know, I learned something on this thing, because the exact same things that we were documenting with this particular individual started happening for her down there. And that, to me, that was like, you better, I call it the Snoop Doggy Dog, you better check references on folks. And I even check references that aren't the references. Like if as Dr. Little so kindly said, I've been doing this for a while, so I know a lot of people in South Carolina in different districts, and I'm friends with a lot of the principals, so I can call and say, hey, tell me about so-and-so.
So I think it's kind of safe to say if there is somebody there that's printing out the contracts and handing them to them, those people taking those positions are probably people that, you know, we'd want to take a harder look at anyways. So, I mean, I'm not so sure that's such a great. Now, the bonuses and the sign-ons, like you said, I think that's something as a board that we could look at to help out with the process.
Do we have outs as a part of our contract language that I know sometimes getting reports back from registries and so on and so forth, certifications and those kind of things, sometimes there can be a lag there, particularly with COVID. Are there outs within our contract that state, contingent upon satisfactory registry report, so on and so forth?
So that's why we don't, are you talking about like, as far as getting a report back, like from the State Department, if their certificate is clear, that type of thing?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
say we offer a contract is signed by them, turned back into us, but maybe the registry report doesn't line up with having received it prior to the actual execution of the contract.
So what we've worked really hard, and Dr. Kuhn can tell you the language we've worked really hard with our principals to have with employees when they offer a job to them. We share with them we're very interested in them. We would like to move forward with offering them a position, but nothing is ever official until board approval with our teachers, with our professional staff, because until we go through the whole process with them, which includes the background check and the certificate check, all those pieces, until all those are complete, which is complete by the time we bring it to you for the board packet, until that's complete, we will not approve them. Once we have that and you guys approve them, then the next day, then we give them the go-ahead to kind of move forward and those people can begin. So we've worked really hard with that and crafted that with our principals. We have to be careful because we have to reach out to those people and let them know we're interested in you. We want you to be here. We extend that offer, but we always tell them it's never 100% until we have, made it official with the board. And that's never official until we've kind of, again, crossed those T's and dotted those I's, and sled checks, all those types of things have to happen.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Price and Dr. Kuhn, so the argument may be that the process itself is rather laborious to begin with.
It is.
We're just not going to
Dr.
let
Kuhn would
anybody walk
probably agree
in
with
and
that.
stand in front of our kids if we
This
can
means
help
I
it,
agree.
right? Well, I mean, and once you sit through about 3 of them, what starts happening is you start guessing what their answers are going to be too sometimes. And we're going to make sure that Dr. Kuhn can get back in plenty of time for his next interview.
Well,
But
and
because
I would
it's
say,
already
too,
rather laborious, adding additional roadblocks to it. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I hear both of you talking about is adding additional roadblocks to already a thorough and laborious process does not benefit you at the school level.
So our language, to get to when I ask somebody to be a part of Lexington 1 or Middle School in particular, I say, this is what I say, almost word for word. I say, can I have your permission to take your name to the board for approval? And part of that process is going to be an extensive background check. Sometimes we joke about, I hope you don't have, don't have any kind of criminal record or something like that. But I mean, really, that's what we're doing in Lexington 1. We're checking because these are our kids we're talking about. So they understand that. They know that I'm offering an opportunity for a job, but they have to all those hurdles need to be cleared before we can move forward to actually extend a contract to them.
Sure. Thank you. I think there were no specific concerns regarding GCF-R, so we can move on to GDF. And Mr. Kuhn, if you do have an appointment you need to get to, we certainly do not want to stand in the way of that. So.
I'm good. I'm 1:30. So
okay, 1:30. Okay, I thought you said 1. I'm sorry. My apologies. All right. Moving on to GDF. So we will, again, turn that over to you, Dr. Little, for that.
So absolutely. So again, I'd love for Dr. Kuhn to speak to this as well about the issue of ratification as a condition of employment. And I know that Devonna has done quite a bit of work when it comes to some research on this and what it looks like across the board, and some bigger general pictures for you to get a wider view of what that might look like. So Ms. Price, if you will take that away as well.
Sure. So in general, I did reach out to our SCASA personnel group to try to find out you know, other districts, kind of what they were doing as far as bringing names and ratification, and how many of them, as part of ratifications, use that for conditions for approval. We had about 10 districts that kind of responded throughout the state. Only 2 of those really actually use those as the board actually approves the support staff as part of ratification. The others, all the others, they bring the support staff names just like we do now, but they don't hold up any part of the process for that. They just bring them to them just like we do now for notification. One of the districts that I mentioned that approved them, their whole district's only 600 students, so that's probably not too many support staff they're bringing as part of the process. Very small district. You know, again, it kind of goes back to, with support staff, there's no season for support staff. I don't know if we're professional staff much, you know, anymore, if there's a season for that either. We're recruiting all the time, but definitely with support staff, there's certainly a lot of turnover. We are constantly searching for candidates, and we are looking for the best as well for them. And one of the things that, and I'm sure Dr. Kuhn will speak to, we would love for you to be aware of them, and we bring those names so that you can be aware of them. Again, having to post and wait for approval and wait for them to start would create a number of problems. I think number one, that lag in time, if it's a crucial position, let's say a custodial or housekeeping position, you know, if it's a month or a couple of weeks between a board meeting, it's a lot of time for them not to have someone or to be putting other work on other people in the building, especially when those positions are already so difficult, and that they probably are a man or 2 down already in the building a lot of times anyway. Dr. King, I'll kind of stop there and maybe let you speak to that personally. I know you've had some tough situations this year.
But first of all, all of our support staffs in every school district across the state and in the nation, they're just vital. I mean, I just love my folks. Most of my people have been with us since we founded the school in 2012. But they're so hard. Like good people are so hard to find for that, and for the money that we pay them. But I'm not here to talk about that. So they are living paycheck to paycheck. Many of my folks who are in that situation, and I've had a custodial position that's been open for over a year. Or about a year. I've interviewed, I can't even tell you how many people, and I've done it long enough where I have a feeling about somebody after I've talked with them, and just something that they said or body language or something, even on a Zoom, I'll see, and I'll check a reference, and then it'll come back, you know, not a negative kind of thing. So I have had to talk this year a couple of people off the ledge in my custodial group, because I don't have enough people to, like, I'm down a person, so they're having to pick up other areas that they normally wouldn't have to do, and so they're doing more work than they normally would do, and it's tough. Like, y'all, since March, it's been hard. Like, this is I've been doing this for a long time, and this year from March to now has probably been the toughest of my professional career, and I've seen it in my support staff folks too, in forms of stress and the things that they deal with. So, so it's been, if they have to wait, if I've got somebody who's really good and then the references check out, and they're not employed at the time, and the references check out, if I don't get them in a timely fashion, I'm going to lose them to somewhere else. They're going to get picked up in another district, because other districts are in the same situation we are in terms of trying to find really good people, or they're going to go to another business or a vendor to take their skills there. And that's unfortunate when that happens. So those folks, we really try to look out for our folks and get them in a situation where it's a good situation for them, a good working environment for them. But To put them off for a little bit longer, like they can't do it. Like they fiscally, they just can't, they don't have the money to do it.
In our last meeting, I made the comment about when we hire support staff, more often than not, we hire them at need.
Yes.
You know, if we have a vacancy today, we need to fill it today.
Right.
And those are such low-paying jobs, and a lot of those people don't even get 40 hours on top of that. So to
Well,
take that away.
It took me 3 months to find a support staff, Mike, on for a special needs position, because I had to find the right. It's a situation in a classroom with a certain population of kids, and we just.
And that takes a special person anyway.
That
to,
takes a
you
special
know,
person.
special
anyway.
needs.
And
you
I
know.
tell you, it was so hard. God smiled on me on that one. We found a really good one, but.
Yeah,
it
so
took
I
3
don't think
months.
we need to do anything to impede the progress of quickly hiring those people. We do the vetting process and what have you, and I think that we've done a very good job with that by and large. Yeah. And to impede that would just be a step in the wrong direction. Doesn't improve anything for the district.
Would you say a majority of those positions are, when they are hired, they're hired immediately because of potentially unemployment, or is there typically a 2-week workout, or is there kind of split?
Most of my people who are with me now, I hired from other places, and they've been with me since 2012. Now, if I'm trying to hire somebody, it's kind of a split. I'm trying to think of the last few people that I've interviewed. Just the most recent people I've interviewed have been unemployed.
Sure.
Folks, and there was a reason why they were unemployed.
Yeah, probably more direct reflection of COVID and higher unemployment rates.
I think in general, it's kind of a split, but right now, like you said, with COVID, we're seeing a lot of unemployment and there.
Yeah, I think the question for us was not per se a ratification as a precondition to employment, but by and large, just a general ratification, because there appears to be some language within state law that, if interpreted one way, would suggest that the board needs to approve all employees, regardless of certification status. And so I think that was really sort of the hinging question, if I'm not mistaken, because I think everybody kind of agrees to the just absolute immediate need of support service and support staff, and not wanting to belabor that process and giving the freedom to operate there. But at the same time, as a responsibility of the board, what do we have to abide by regarding state law? And so were you able to find out anything regarding that, Ms. Price, regarding state, or at least the supposed conflict that existed? I know you said you spoke with SCASA or...
I mean, our attorney still agrees with the stance that, we don't have to have it, that law still applies just to professional staff. I did try to go and look at various board policies, just different ones throughout the state. And again, I had the ones that I shared with you that had kind of shared their version of the policy. And they use a variety of language about ratification. Like, for example, Richland 2 says the superintendent will notify the board of newly hired support staff as part of the personnel ratification portion of the board's agenda. So, it's kind of different policies are different places, but most of them seem to be at the notification part. And that's how they kind of word it.
Oh, Kyle, I looked up those policies as well. And I'm glad you mentioned Richland's 2s, because I checked just Aiken, Richland 1, Richland 2, Lexington 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then I just checked Greenville since they're the largest. So of all those, Lexington 3 and 4 are the only districts that state the superintendent employees all support staff. I'll read a couple. The board employs all support personnel based on recommendation of the superintendent. That's Aiken. Richland 1 says the superintendent will make recommendations to the board for employment of all administrative and instructional support staff. But I like Richland 2, like she mentioned, the superintendent will notify the board of newly hired support staff as part of the personnel ratification portion of the board's agenda. That way, we're not holding anything up, but if there is a question as to state law, we're kind of covering our bases there by ratifying it.
And I don't know, you guys will have to tell me because I'm new at this. I know Mr. Stacy brings the names to you. I don't know if that would be I don't know. Is that notifying the board, or does that need to look different, or?
I have a lot of ideas about that. I'll be glad. I shared a report with him. It's actually just a little different version of what used to be shared with the board in previous years. I'll be glad to send that to you. Because like I said, most of my issues are with being able to track if there's a new position created, especially one that's not in the budget, things of that nature. I don't want to hold up any kind of process. I just need some way to keep up with exactly what's going on, like who's left, who came in, how many, things like that on a monthly basis.
Yeah, under sort of present operation, if you will, it's for informational purposes only is how it's presented. And so I would probably argue there's no ratification that's occurring as a part of procedural vote when it's under the heading of informational purposes only.
I didn't quite follow you on that one, Kyle. Run through that one. We're talking about support staff now.
Right,
Okay?
so support staff, I think the crux of the discussion here is that, number one, we appreciate the absolute need of support staff services within schools. And to your point, the immediate need, not something that can be belabored. Different, though, from professional hiring, where, as we spoke about earlier, as Mr. Kuhn says, when he offers to a teacher, may I take your name to the board? The argument here would be that Mr. Kuhn could hire that housekeeper without saying, may I take your name to the board, and waiting on employment to occur after the vote.
Right.
They could go ahead and employ right then. So it's not a precondition to employment.
Right.
But simply as the names are brought to us during our procedural votes, it is merely a ratification of Mr. Kuhn's decision.
Right.
Not
Well, that's what
of-
we do now.
Well, no, I would say we don't. We don't ratify it because it's being brought to us for informational purposes only.
Okay. I got you. Okay.
And so the state law is unfortunately a little ambiguous in that the heading that it's under is professional, but the language says all employees, which leads you to believe that they're talking about both professional and support.
Well,
And so-
all means all, yeah.
Yep, so that's really the crux of the argument, if you will, because I think the committee agrees, we by no means want to stand in the way of Mr. Kuhn being able to operate his school effectively, and to do so without hesitancy.
Right.
And so, for us, it's more of making sure that we are, number one, staying within the confines of state law and fulfilling our duties as board. So definitely not as a precondition to employment, but more as just simply ratification. Now, along the same lines, do we have a probationary period that exists for support staff?
We do.
We do, yeah. They're automatically on a 90-day probationary period once they begin their position. So
Okay.
yeah.
So 90 days, so we're meeting every month. So we're, as a part of that ratification process, if something glowing were to come out that a majority of the board did not feel comfortable with about a support staff,
Absolutely.
then at that point, the board could
And
fall
that
well
has
within the probationary period, so it should not conflict or put us at liability for lawsuit. Is that correct?
Correct.
Would that be your
That's right.
interpretation as HR?
Yes,
Right.
correct.
And
Well, and South Carolina is also a right-to-work state, so we've got that plays into that as well, so.
And when Andrea White was here, she actually brought up an instance of that in another district where they had that whole process in place, and then they found out something about employee after they were hired but not ratified. And so they just told them, you know, you were never officially hired because you weren't ratified by the board.
Okay. So, Mr. Kuhn, Ms. Price, procedurally, there would not be any interference or really any change of operation by simply moving from a informational purposes to a ratification process. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
I think
As long as it's not a precondition to
As long as
employment.
it's not a precondition for employment.
I'd be fine with that.
And just, I just want you to know, they're being vetted the same way the professional staff is being vetted.
Sure.
I mean, so my conversation with them is almost the exact, well, it is the same thing.
They're
Do
gonna
I have your
serve- they're
permission to
gonna
take your
serve the
name to the
same
board,
children.
Right,
Yeah.
pending background check, you know, and their approval?
that's right. On our end as well, right.
Yes, absolutely. Well, yeah.
Yep, and obviously, by no means do we want any recommendation by the committee to the board. Do we want it to, in any way undervalue or undermine what principals, assistant principals, all of the hiring staff at sites, and schools, we by no means want it to do that. You know, this is merely us trying to comply with our interpretation of state law and our responsibilities as board. So, any other questions regarding GDF? All right, we had no issues with GDF-R per my notes. Therefore, Dr. Little, do you have any additional comments? Ms. Price, anything?
I do not.
Okay. All right, so discussion just in general, we've kind of handled that throughout the meeting, but again, kind of to circle back, we can certainly open for any discussion. We'll start with you, Ms. Garris, if you have any comments, questions, concerns.
Well, Dr. Kuhn, thank you for coming. I really enjoy hearing from the boots on the ground, the people that it actually impacts on a daily basis, our policies. I don't know if there's some way in the professional staff hiring that we could say, you know, there's a pool, you can go back to that pool if this is a position that you've recently advertised, or I'm not so much worried about teachers, because as Dr. Kuhn said, you know, it's all the same kind of discipline, as I am the upper level administrative positions, making sure all of those are posted. So I don't know, I mean, I could look up other boards, or if that's something y'all are interested in. I don't want to hold anything up, but I would like to make sure that,
I think what's hard, and I hear what you're saying, I don't know how to address this. I think what our attorney would probably caution us is when you start naming exceptions, when you leave out one, that's where you kind of open yourself up. Because I probably can't sit here and name all the exceptions we would have. It's kind of like when you start saying your thank yous to everybody and you go, oh gosh, I had left them out and now their feelings are so hurt because I didn't thank them, you know. But I hear your point. That would be my only concern is if we start trying to list what are the exceptions or what are all the things we're going to say that are times we would not do that. I don't know. We have a lot of scenarios that come across the table, so I would hate to include one or not include one. I don't know. So the wording of that, would be something to consider.
Well, I'm sorry, is it okay if I tell a story? Y'all gonna tell me to get out of here, and I do need to get out of here in a few minutes. So a few years ago, we had two of my folks got promoted, Kay Braley and Natalie Smith, who used to work with me, and I love them dearly, and they can come back anytime, but they're doing fantastic jobs where they are. So we had a big pool of folks that, you know, that applied for that, and it got late, like in the hiring season, and so we were into May, 1st of June. I actually was traveling back and forth to my vacation place during those times. So it was in the summertime, and we had I lost out on people because it got too late. and they had to remove their name from the pool. And then it ended up I had to hire two. So one got hired at one time, one got hired another for our school district, which was fantastic. So we had interviewed a fantastic group of people, and that's where you go to that, here's two really great people. I'd like to have both of them here, but only have one position. So we get candidate A, and then a week down the road, one of my other people gets promoted, and now I just got finished doing this, interviewing 6 or 8 people with a whole team. We team interview, so we have 6. I have like 8, or in that particular one, I probably had too many of my teachers involved in it. So logistically, I would have had to put everyone back together during the summertime to come back and hire somebody that is really a valuable. It's an amazingly important position in our school. And they had already said, man, we can live, Dr. Kuhn, we can live with Jada, or we can live with Mike. You make the call. We're glad we're not in your seat. You make the call. So I made the call on one, and then a week later, here comes another thing. So number 2. So we were able to get number 2 over there. And so you're up against a lot. So thinking, I'm just showing you my lens, and I know you guys have helicopter, and you got to go way up, and I'm just showing you just a little telescope lens of it. For me, I've got to gather all those people back together during the summertime to have a team approach with that, and then I'm fighting other districts who are saying we're not going to let them out of the contract because they've already signed a contract with us. And I'm trying to get the very best people. So that kind of happened. That's been a while ago, but that kind of happened a few years ago, and I don't know if that even kind of speaks to what you were saying, Ms. Garris, on that. It's just weird. Sometimes that kind of stuff happens. Now, I haven't had 2 people get promoted like that in a long time, but that happened to us. Okay.
But over 32 places, and plus central services, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's a lot of exceptions that take place. They don't necessarily all take place at the same time or in the same, when was the last time that happened to you? I mean, before it happened, had it ever happened before?
No, I never lost 2. I usually lose 1 a year, but I don't lose 2, especially at the same time. But the other part too, and I'm not a board member, so I don't know the laws on this thing, is we did advertise. And now we're just talking about another week or so down the road, and you're going to reopen it, and that stays open for 7 to 10 days. And now you're in the middle of June, almost in July, trying to get somebody to come on board. So.
And the later you go in the school year, the more difficult the later you go in the summer, the more difficult it is to find the right person.
If Lexington 1 is not hiring people by the end of this month, we're missing out on the best people. This month is the month. This month is now. I can't say that. That's true all the time, because sometimes somebody comes in May. But if you're looking at somebody in May or end of June or in July, there's a reason that you're looking at. They're still available.
Okay. Yes, that answers my question. And like I said, maybe there's some language that could be put in here about a pool, because I'm okay, like you said, it's a position that's already been posted. There's a pool. You have people that you want to choose from. I understand not reposting that same position. That only makes sense. But if there is a position that is newly created and we aren't posting that, that is where the problem lies. So, I mean, maybe that's some kind of language that can be put in there. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't, I think I don't know that that's happening. I think we've, unless it's new to budget, is that what you're referring to, like a new to budget FTE or a new?
Right. And so, just for instance, in the operations department, I know we had a new title created and a new person put in that position, but that was not in our budget, and to my knowledge, it wasn't posted, and it was actually, I would argue it's a promotion, but that never came before the board as, can we promote this person? Can we add this position to the budget? So that's where my concern is.
If I'm not mistaken, in that particular instance, that was a subtraction from the budget. There was a budget reduction.
Well, there was a title that was, I guess, done away with, and then it was split into two. And so one of the new titles, there was a new title created, and then the person from the old title, their job was replaced with someone. And then there was a new title given to another person.
Okay, so I guess what I'm saying, again, I would go back to the term generally, and, you know, I think my pushback on that particular situation was, as we described it at the time, and we discussed it, I believe, in multiple board meetings, was that that was not considered a promotion. I think we even brought that before. We talked about that even in that process, even though what was happening with the process. So the board was certainly made aware of that situation even at the time. And again, I would say, you know, I think the administration made a pretty compelling case that that was not a promotion, but
I would
mean,
still
we can
argue, yeah.
disagree on that
Yeah.
particular point, but I guess what I'm saying is that I would say across the board, I would go back to the term generally, we generally post things. I can give you an example or two, my first year here, where when I got here in May, we had to hire 5 principals in my first 8 weeks. And so I started May 2nd, and basically at that point, we had to hire 5 principals. In that particular situation, I'll give you an example because she's sitting here in the room. You know, Devonna Price was promoted late in that school year, June-ish, I think, at that point. We had to hire her replacement, and in short order had to turn that around, but had an assistant principal in waiting, ready to go. And I would offer the board that in that particular situation, we had, and of course, she's done an amazing job with, and I think certainly the experience of that has borne itself out. We don't want to call those necessarily names, but certainly very pleased with the performance of that particular principal. But that's an example from a principal perspective where we had someone in the wings waiting to go, and delays would have made that even more complicated. So, and then I would tell you, as we've talked about, you know, ultimately the board gets to hear, you know, those movements. And so, you know, I think we kind of protect ourselves already from that. And I would tell you, you know, generally speaking, those positions are posted, they're advertised. We walk through them across the board from support staff on up. I mean, they're generally posted. So, I mean, I think, again, the generally piece, and I think if the board has concerns about those, if the board has concerns about that, the board certainly can direct our actions in terms of, well, we think that, we disagree. We think that you need to take that one back and repost it and go through a different process. I mean, I would certainly do that at the direction of the board.
But in the case I'm talking about, it was never posted because y'all argued that it wasn't a promotion, but I think anytime you get a raise and a different job title that wasn't in the budget and it wasn't brought before the board and you have additional duties, but then you're also saying there's a reduction in force. But what the board also wasn't told was that the position you said that we were doing away with, that person retired, but then came back on at the same hourly rate and then stayed for months and months and months. And we also weren't told about that. So essentially, I mean, there might have been a reduction in force, but there wasn't a reduction in the budget, and there was a new position created. I just need a way to keep up with, if there is a position that is hired and it's not in the budget and it's newly created, I would like for the board to have a way to keep up with that and be made aware of that.
So I just want to be clear. So you're saying you want to vote on any hourly contracted employee that we have in the school district?
I don't necessarily think we need to vote on them. I would just like to know that, because there are, you know, lines in the budget that say temporary salary. So I understand that's where that person went. But I would like to know, instead of being told we're having, you know, we're saving money by this person retiring and then splitting their position into 2 and paying both of those people less, we didn't know for the next, 7 months that person was actually staying on payroll in an hourly position after they retired.
Okay, in that particular situation, if I'm not mistaken, they were finalizing particular projects that they had been working on.
Right, they were. Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure out how we report anybody that falls into that category and are temporary.
Well, just instead of saying
Contracted
someone's
employment.
retiring and we're saving money by splitting their position into two and paying both of those people less.
Well, that was true, though.
Right, but
mean,
we
that's-
didn't get
that's
the other
accurate.
half of it that, okay, they're actually staying on for the rest of the year and we're paying them their hourly rate of what their salary was.
But still, I mean, the first part is accurate, and so if they were coming back to finish projects, I mean, I don't think that's, I mean, if the board wants to have that information, I can certainly look for it, but that feels like to me that is a part of the operational components of what you're asking.
Right, and
the
I'm not asking for
administration to
approval.
do.
I'm just saying, like, I would like to be made aware of that. I don't think the board needs to approve that. We just need to know, when we're being told we're hiring someone and we're saving money by doing so, that
But again, that was true, though, that all that,
that was
I
half.
want to go back.
Yeah,
No,
that was
no, I
half
mean,
the truth.
no,
We
it
just
was all
weren't
true.
told the other half, that we were
but
still
we-
paying them for the remainder of the year, just at an hourly rate.
Well, again, but the point that we told you that you were saving money and it was a budget reduction was accurate.
Not for the first 7 months, because
it
that
was-
person stayed
because
there.
If it was paid out of temporary services that we'd already had budgeted, that money was already budgeted in someplace else.
Right. The
So-
point, you're just not being straightforward. I mean, no one told us that this person is staying here for the remainder of the year and we're paying them an hourly rate.
Well, they didn't stay here. I mean, again, I want to be clear about the language there. In that particular case, and I could certainly get more information about that, but if that person were contracted to handle some individual projects, I mean, we have, for example, we have other people who go back and I'll give you an example. We have principals that often retire, and they come back and do an interim someplace, or they fill in some other place. I mean, I don't know that, I mean, they would certainly fall in the same kind of category. But again, on our end, we'll certainly provide whatever information that the board would like to have. But, you know, we have people coming back and filling in and doing other stuff across the board. So just as an aside.
Mr. Anderson, any thoughts regarding anything discussed today?
I think we've covered everything okay. I think that, you know, a lot of what we do is a sad commentary on the world that we live in today, which is a very litigious society, and that you have to think of it in the terms of, well, if we do this, are we going to get sued? You know, and sadly, that's with a lot of things that we do. But I think we've cleared up some things today and gotten a little off topic, but okay, we're good to go.
And I would say, kind of in line with your comment, I don't really think about right now. I think about 5 years from now, 5 boards from now, 50 years from now. I think about who that superintendent may be. I think about who that, not saying 5 years from now. 50 years from now. Let's talk more long term. So let's say 50 years from now.
Next year.
So thinking 50 years from now, you know, I think part of our role as a board is to prepare the next board, the next superintendent, the next principal, the next housekeeper for success. And unfortunately, along with what you're saying, we also have to protect against those who may not wish to want to fall within those, and they just may want to go rogue. And so that's why it always causes me pause and hesitation when I see words such as generally, when I see words such as just very generic kind of terms. And I certainly understand. I understand from the business operation side of things. I understand. But I also understand that we can have language that covers a lot of for instances, and then we can have that very general cover your base kind of language as well. Every real estate contract you sign has one of those. If you forgot to sign something as a part of your mortgage, well, guess what? you're still responsible for your mortgage. Because there's a line in there, in that contract that says, I agree that I'm still responsible, even if I neglected to sign something, or even if the attorney told me I didn't have to sign it. So as I look at what's before us, I think about the categories when it comes to our HR process. I think about new positions, I think about transfers, I think about promotions, and I think about vacant positions. And those are really sort of the four categorical things that occur within HR that you're going to run into, and each one of those, I think, has their own subset of operation. I think it's hard to apply a very broad paintbrush across all four of those because as you're talking about, Dr. Little, it is very nuanced in each one of those categories. And so I think you have to have some mode of operation within that allows you to have free reign in this area. In this area, it needs notification. In this area, it's required to be posted. I think there exists within each one of those categories some level of operation that can exist. And I think that's really the crux of this conversation is we've really kind of just narrowed this thing down to now GCF. And so I guess my challenge to HR would be, as we look at these types of occurrences that happen within HR, new position, transfer, promotion, vacant position, is there language that can exist that would be agreeable to everyone to allow for the proper freedoms so that way nothing stands in the way of educating children, but at the same time gives proper notification and approval by the board for those things that are needed. And I think that's really where everything kind of settles out at the end of the day. So I would say, if we could possibly look at some language, I would like to see that. I did at one time send over the Department of Administration for South Carolina. That I think theirs is fairly comprehensive in the way it sort of covers that. And again, we're talking about the state of South Carolina. So we're talking about an entity larger than us, who has a very set way of operating, very similar to the way we do. And I think that would potentially be a template if we wanted to entertain that kind of language. So I think that's probably for more discussion. And honestly, I would say that we now kind of narrow our focus down to just GCF, so that way we can sort of finalize our role as the committee, and then make any determination if we need to have an attorney review prior to sending to the board for final approval. So I really kind of envision one more meeting, if everybody's in agreement, and then we can hopefully kind of put everything to rest. Any questions?
I think when you first started talking, the saying that came to mind for me is you were talking about future boards is leave it better than you found it.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yep. Very good. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Price. We certainly
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
And congratulations.
And congratulations,
Thank
yes,
you.
on your new role.
Thank you.
And to Catherine, congratulations to you as well.
Yes. Yes, let's go ahead and, I think as part of our, let's go ahead and set our next meeting.
Set it before you go.
So as we look at everything, and again, if there's any feedback, please don't hesitate to email, and I will be sure to share with the entire committee. Next Tuesday, we have a board meeting. What about the 29th?
Be all right.
Of April, I assume?
Of April?
I'm not available that day.
Okay. May 4th? May 13th?
I'm available that day.
Ms. Garris?
That'll be all right.
Mr. Anderson? Okay, so we will set May 13th, same time, okay with
You like
everybody?
that noon day? You like noon?
Yeah, I like having it
Kyle,
while
I mean,
everyone's
Dr.
still at
Guyton, you
work.
good with noon?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, do I have a motion to
You got
adjourn?
it, Tracy?
Oh.
Thank you.
Do I have a
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.